Hey, this is Jono. Hope you're doing well. Now, you've got a cool idea, an amazing idea, and you work inside of a business or an organization, but you're struggling to get support for your idea. You're struggling to get people excited about it. You're struggling to get buy-in, okay? But how do you do that? How do you get buy-in so you can proceed and make that idea a reality? Well, that's what I'm going to cover in this video. So I'm going to talk about what buy-in is, the common mistakes that people often make when trying to get it so you can avoid those mistakes, and then I'm going to walk you through a 5-step buy-in flow. This is what I do when I'm approaching buy-in, both when I've worked in companies in the past, as well as how I recommend my clients to approach buy-in as well, okay? So let's get started. Now, one of the first things we want to do is to make sure that you're pointing in the right direction, okay? And for this, we need to understand that there are 2 types of idea, okay? 2 different types of idea. Now, can you guess what they are? Take a wild guess. What do you think? Well, the first one are bad ideas, okay? There are some ideas out there that are just not good, right? They might work on paper, but they won't work in reality. They may be inconceivable or impractical. They may just be terrible ideas, okay? There are just bad ideas out there. But what's the other type of idea? Well, you might think it's good ideas, but it's in fact ideas worth testing, okay? Ideas worth testing. The problem that a lot of people have when they're trying to get buy-in and or support for their ideas is they pitch it as a good idea, and then everybody makes a binary decision about whether they agree with it or not. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Or is it somewhere in between? And the problem is it's very much of an off or on, a binary yes or no kind of decision, and we don't want to do that. Instead, the first thing I want you to do is when you're approaching getting this kind of buy-in is share your idea as something that's worth testing. You say, okay, I've got this great idea. I think there's a lot of value for these different reasons. And I think we should test this. And what that does is it reframes your idea within the context of an experiment, which feels much more manageable and much more approachable than this big new thing that we have to build that might not work, and then you got to garner a whole load of resources and time and effort and all that kind of stuff, okay? So that's the first thing I want us to focus on, okay? Now let's take a moment and talk about the mistakes that people have, the mistakes that people commonly make when trying to build buy-in in an organization. And there's 3 of them, all right? The first one, and I've been very guilty of this when I used to work for companies as a full-time, employee as opposed to a consultant and coach and all the rest of it. The first one is pitching. Is that what happens is somebody's got a great idea, and you've probably seen this, and you may have even done it yourself, is they get all of this written down. It might be in a deck, or it could be in a document, or it could be in a deck and a document, or it could be in a 60-minute presentation, but they basically get every conceivable decision about their idea written down and documented and organized, and it looks very organized and professional, but it's too much. It's just too much information, right? Especially if you're wanting to get a senior member of an organization involved, whether it's a CEO or a CMO or a VP or an SVP, someone like that. Bullet points is what you want to focus on, okay? So don't overload the amount of information that you're providing, okay? That's a critical mistake a lot of people make. Now, this is often combined with persistence, okay? And, often somebody puts so much time into this deck or this plan, and then they just try and get everybody to see it, and they're booking calls and meetings and coffees with absolutely everybody, and they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's too much, okay? Good ideas don't get through just because of lots of energy, okay? It's the right kind of energy is the key thing that we need to focus on. But some people, and I've never done this, but some people certainly do this, is they also play politics. Is that they cozy up with the leadership, or they play people against each other, or they try to generate failure for other people so they can benefit from that. Don't do that. You're an awful person if you do that, okay? Let's remember, we're human, right, before we are employees, okay? That's really important. Some people kind of forget and lose their humanity, and they think anything's possible as long as it can get ahead in the game, right? Well, those people suck, and don't be one of those people, all right? So stay away from those 3 things. So just to recap at this point in our journey, make sure you focus on just testing your idea. That's all you want to do. Is you've got a cool idea, you want to be able to test it and see if it's an effective idea. And avoid pitching, persistence, and politics. So now this takes us on to our method, okay? And I call this not being able to write every single time I record one of these damn videos. I can't write. This is your BuyIn Flow, okay? This is broken down into 5 steps. So the first thing you want to do is you want to identify the metrics of success. In many cases, when people are wanting to build buy-in around an idea, what they do is they're so excited and wrapped up in the moment with the idea that they don't think about translating that into success metrics that other people are going to care about, right? So if you've got a great idea and you need to pitch it to an executive, well, there's going to be those executives are going to be responsible in your business for a certain set of metrics, right? And your idea is going to need to move the needle on one or more of those metrics. And those metrics are often things like money, right? It can be brand, brand growth and recognition. It could be overall growth, right? It could be, I don't know, stock price. I don't know. There's all kinds of elements that people are going to be looking at when it comes to success. So you want to make sure that when you have your idea, you need to make sure that it moves the needle in some way with those metrics. So pick which metrics you know the other person or the team that you have to build buy-in with. Make sure that you understand what metrics they care about and start picking some really practical metrics that you can focus on. Like if you're trying to build buy-in around, for example, building a new community, it could be, well, we're going to build growth in this community by X%, or set some targets, okay? Now, the second thing you want to put together here is going to be the elevator pitch. You need to be able to explain your idea in a minute, okay? So 1 minute. Right, building out a massive deck, that's the next step of the journey, okay? The first thing you're going to want to do is you want to make sure that you can communicate crisply what this idea is and why it's going to be beneficial to your organization, right? And again, speak to what your audience wants to see, speak to the real value of it, put together a pitch. This can be a couple of paragraphs, and then run it by a bunch of people you know and trust and get feedback on it. It's not exciting, it's not compelling, right? And memorize it. That's really, really important. Asking someone to sit down and go through a PowerPoint deck is a huge ask. Asking them to sit down and read your document with all of that information in it is a huge ask. You've got to be able to boil it down. Now, the next step here is to define clear value, okay? And this has got to be practical, okay? How do you know if it's practical value? Because you can say, can we measure this value, yes or no? So, for example, if you say, okay, if we build this community, we're going to be able to have better engagement with our audience. That's too general, it's too fluffy, it's too inspecific, okay? But if you're able to say, if we build this community, we are going to be able to create ambassador programs that can do these 4 things, right? That's very specific, that's very measurable. If you have a new idea for a feature in a product, right? And you say, it will increase the overall productivity of our users. That's not going to be that's too fluffy. Right? But if you say, if we have this feature in our product, it will speed up their productivity in this particular task by 20%, then it's going to be compelling, okay? So get really clear on the value. So you define what success looks like, you put together a really short summary of what your idea is, and then you're able to break it down into the bullet points of value that you're going to deliver, okay? The 4th step here, and this is really important, is a path to success, okay? Now, this is the problem I see in many cases where people have come up with all kinds of ideas and they're trying to get buy-in, is that what they do is they produce the pitching approach. They put all this information into a deck or a document. It's way too much. So what you want to do here is you want to break this down into steps, okay? Or you could call them phases. So you're going to say, in phase 1, what we're going to do is we're going to do this with the goal of getting these specific results. We'll evaluate that, and then we'll evaluate whether we want to go to phase 2. In phase 2, it's going to require this amount of work. And then what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate to see whether we get this expanded set of results and metrics, okay? And that's how we're going to do it. What you're doing is you're breaking it down. The whole kind of spirit of this is to make the overall process of getting buy-in feel very, very accessible, right? We've got to get rid of those massive PowerPoint decks and massive Google Docs because there's too much information in there, okay? People are not going to read all those words. But if you can break it down into, these are the metrics that we're going to move the needle on, here is a summary of the idea, this is the clear practical value that we're going to deliver, and here's how we get to executing this and testing this idea, you're already going to be winning people over, all right? And this, my friend, is the cherry on top. And we're actually going to get a little political. So what you want to do is you want to identify what is the personal win for your audience. So imagine you're talking through your idea and you're talking to somebody who runs a support team, right? So their team is responsible for providing support by email and chat and whatever else to customers. Well, what are the things that suck about their life and how does your idea make their life better? Well, one thing a lot of support people are going to struggle with is that there's 100 million tickets coming in any day and they can only get through so many of them. So if your idea can reduce the overall number of support tickets, well, then that person who runs support is like, this sounds pretty good. This is going to help me out. Awesome. Now let's imagine you're talking to somebody who works in the marketing team or runs marketing. Well, what are the things that they struggle with? What are the things that they need to deal with all of the time? Well, maybe that's going to be brand awareness, and maybe your idea is going to move the needle in this particular metric, okay? So you want to try and figure out what do the person you're trying to get buy-in from, what do they personally get out of it, okay? And the key thing here is you identify the pain of that audience and then you invert it to get the value that you're going to be looking for. Look at what sucks in their life and how does your idea make their life suck a little bit less, okay? This plays a huge role in how people support ideas. If they know that they're going to get something out of it, then they're more likely to throw their support behind it than if they're not, and only other people are going to benefit from it. Okay? So that's it. I hope this was useful. Remember, we've got to position our ideas as something that's worth testing. You basically say, here's a cool idea. I think it's worth exploring. Let's see what we can do. Hope this was useful. If you've got any questions, of course, don't hesitate in popping them into the comments or drop me a note or whatever. Happy to help. And I'll see you on the next one.